excited about today's topic. You know, I'm waiting for folks to join, but I got something that I was just thinking about. And today is Monday, which is Martin Luther King's birthday. We celebrate his birthday today. And a couple of things I was thinking about, and that was his advocacy, his quest for equality, his nonviolence way in moving through discrimination, his way of opening up so many doors for individuals of color, Black people, to be able to be a part of the conversation, to be in the room, to allow us the ability to be places that we at one time in our lives we were not there. So as I just was just talking about, is today is Martin Luther King's Day birthday. As we celebrated today, we were a part of the Loudoun County, Leesburg, Virginia movement, where we actually walked, and there was probably a well over 1,000 and some people out there. You'll see there's a live on that as well, where we actually march from the courthouse, where if you look at the live, there was an individual named Orrin that was actually dragged from the courthouse there in Leesburg back in the early, ooh, right at the turn of the 1919 or 1901 or 18 something, where he was only I believe 19 years old, and was actually dragged, and there was a mob of people that witnessed his hanging. That's how they treated us back then, where we were lynched, we were hung, and there was no justice, no justice whatsoever. So I want to talk about, and I did a quick short earlier, and it was talked about being a dummy, 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 dummy. And I wanted to give you just a brief look of outlook, I guess more than anything, of what it was like for me growing up and born in the 60s, and what it looked like relative to education, relative to moving forward and getting a good job, not really having the resources of what even some of our children have a much better resource and a much better opportunities than we did when we were growing up. So as I mentioned earlier, born in the 60s, and I can remember being in elementary school. So you went to kindergarten, and so let me just back up and put a pin there, that I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which it is in the Midwest. It is the second largest city there in Indiana. But Indiana is known for its car manufacturers. So a lot of individuals, when they graduated from high school, they went and worked at the car manufacturer, Harvest, Dana, all of the big car companies, Chrysler, Ford, all of them was there. There was a saying there was that with Ford, it was cradle to grave, meaning that when you went there, you stayed there. Your mama worked there, your daddy worked there. But that wasn't what I wanted for me. That wasn't what I wanted in life. I don't usually have my nails done, but this is the month that I cut them all off and started all over. And I used to say that these nails was not meant to be to work in a car manufacturer. Now, mind you, there's nothing wrong with that. A number of my relatives have worked at these different car manufacturers, and those that support them as well. And those individuals made a wonderful, wonderful living. They supported their families on that wage and that income. So nothing wrong with it at all. But it wasn't what I wanted to do in life. There was also another job that some individuals went and worked when they graduated from high school, and that was Lincoln Life. So there was a number of um, individuals that looked like me that came in with, worked as clerks, worked in the mailroom, and just different jobs. I took a different path. My path was I started in going to IUPU, Indiana University, Purdue, when they were combined. I'm there in Fort Wayne, but I was a C- student. Can I tell you? I did not know how to study. Even when I was in high school, I was shy. I didn't say anything because I felt that as soon as I opened up my mouth, someone would know I was stupid. Would know that I was a dummy. I was having a conversation with someone probably about a few weeks ago. And this is the saying, and I get it wrong most of the time. I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible and try to get it right. And it says, I always knew, not is not the word dummy. I always knew that you was an idiot, but once you opened up your mouth, it was confirmed. And that's the way I felt. I always seemed that I was not the smartest person in the room. I felt I was the dumbest person in the room. I never raised my hand in class. I very rarely even talked in class because I felt that I wasn't smart enough and I wasn't intelligent enough. And mind you, I went to a predominantly Caucasian school. This is elementary school, this is middle school, and high school. So it's different. It was different because first of all, they looked at you differently. Most of the time, individuals did not come from a class of the middle class. We were not middle. We wasn't a middle class family. We um, I'm the oldest of five. My mom raised us as a single parent. We utilized public assistance and food stamps, and that is not anything to be ashamed of, but it was back then. People looked at you differently back then if you was on public assistance. So I kept my mouth quiet. I didn't say a whole lot. So when I went to college, that continued on, meaning I didn't raise my hand and I was put on academic probation probably after my first year. Yeah, academic probation. And I didn't even know how to tell my family. I didn't even know how to tell my mom, my grandmother. My father wasn't around. So it wasn't anyone that I could talk to. And then no one in my family. No one was in college. No one was in school. So I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a guide. Didn't even have a destiny to go in. I didn't feel comfortable going to the counselors because I felt that they would see me as a dummy. Image is important. It's one thing to see yourself in a certain light, is another thing for individuals to see you in that light. And then once you open up your mouth, it's confirmed, at least by them. So I didn't have a lot of self esteem. No one in my family went to college. So who was I going to go to talk about college? I felt like a dummy. I felt like a dummy because I didn't feel comfortable opening up my mouth. I felt like a dummy because I didn't have anyone to go to, and nor did I feel comfortable going to someone relative to learning and getting an education. So, one of the best things I did, and my sister's on here, and I remember this, oh my gosh. My mom, she approached me, rest her soul, And she said, Tanja, why don't you and Cindy go into the Army on the buddy program? I said, the Army? And she was like, you have to go because Cindy probably won't go unless you go. And I was like, the Army? So I had not thought about the military at all. So, me being, even though I wasn't very smart, but I wasn't a pushover. So I don't take people's word for things. I do a lot of research. So what I did, I went down to the recruiter's office and I just went to ask questions of the different branches of the service. So most of the individuals that I knew, of anybody that went into the military, most of them went to the Army. That's what you hear really back then, back in the 60s. Most people went into the Army. My brother Chris did go into the Marines. He stayed just a very short period of time, but check this out. He was able to get that veteran card. So on Veterans Day, he'd be racking up just like the rest of us with those veteran cards. Oh, I diverted a little bit. So let me get back on track. So, um, what do you think happened? Well, my sister ended up not going, which basically got me off the hook, where my mom didn't feel bad that I wasn't going to go into the Army, into the buddy program, which allowed me to go into the Air National Guard, into the Indiana Air National Guard. Now, sometimes, I don't read very well. So I have to really concentrate on reading. I really have to take my time and often slow down on reading. So I went to, this is when in colleges, they actually had a book. And this book kind of told you of different jobs. And I came something across something that said National Guard. Now, I read it again. Sometimes what is on the paper doesn't translate to my brain, that I read it differently. I thought it said International Air Guard. Now, I do know the difference between words, but I read them differently sometimes. So when I saw it said international, I said, International Air National Guard. I said, what is this? But one thing I knew was that it was right down the street at Bearfield Airport, is an international airport now, but Bearfield and the Indiana Air National Guard was adjacent to each other. So they was right next to each other. So I met with a recruiter, and one of the pivotal things that had me really, really clenched was the Montgomery GI Bill. So I was truly, because again, I was in college, but I was failing. Now, I can tell you what, I was failing royally. When I say royally, I probably even got F's. At least I know I got F's. At my doctorate ceremony, I actually put my transcripts from IUPU, which was, somebody said, Tanya, what was you doing in school? Skipping and jumping it? I must have been. And then I put my grades for my doctorate, vastly different. So, with that being said, I was like, yes, I can get an education by going into the military. So that was my primary goal, going into the military. So think about individuals now that are looking to, they don't have, I wouldn't say have a direction, but there's options. There's options of going to college, getting an education, a formal education. There's trade schools where individuals can learn a trade. And you know what else? And my brother Russell is on the line, and I have other relatives too that there are unions. So, um, being a part of a union also gives you that ability to learn a trade and be able to use that. And you know what? Using your hands is truly a gift. And being able to work with your hands where you can automotive, they have electrical, which my brother is in or was. My brother Chris, he actually did plumbing. So they teach you how to do these tasks and also be a part of the union, which is which is phenomenal. I was talking to someone, or someone was talking the other day that so anyone that's familiar with the military, the Navy is all about shipbuilding, and build these humongous. I mean, you've seen a ship before, right? You've seen these big aircraft carriers, and in Norfolk, Virginia, there is a requirement because Norfolk, Virginia is where the Navy is, and they have a large Navy contingency there. And a lot of Navy and Marines live down in the Norfolk area, right there off the water. And I heard that there is a need or a requirement via Congress to build, let's say, four where aircraft carriers. But you know what the problem is? And I think the requirement was to build, let's say, three within the next 4 or 5 years. And you know what they said? They said due to the shortage labor, they only have enough to build one and a half. So that just tells you that traditional education may not be the route, and it's not the route for everyone. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a firm believer that a education, especially a formal education, is the way to get out of the ghetto. But, not everyone is meant to go to college. I understand that. So, what about getting a trade? Because it is truly what separates the haves and the have nots. And this is my issue. We have a middle class. And in order to be a part of that middle class, you have to know and learn something. You have to have a trade or have an education for something. Like my grandmother used to say, she said, got me looking out this window like a dummy. Don't be looking out the window like a dummy. Take the time, and how can I say? It takes time to study, to get your education. It is not for the faint at heart, not one little bit. I have, so let me, before I go into what my education is, um, we have to understand too that education separates the haves and the have nots. I truly believe that there is and trying to think of the word that I want to use, that there is a dis, I can't even think of the word, and I'm going to have to try to explain it. That there are some groups out there that do not want to see our Black children, our boys and girls, to get an education. Hear me when I say that. There are groups out there that do not want our Black girls and boys to get an education. Because you know why? Because by getting an education, you can compete with their Sally, Mary, and Joe and Susan in these jobs. You can now compete When you don't get a education and you work in some of these menial jobs that you're not making, you don't even, so when I say that, meaning that you don't have an education, you haven't gotten a craft that will allow you to sustain, now you're a sharecropper. Now you're working for the man for peanuts because getting an education is a sacrifice. It is not for the faint at heart. It isn't something that you just gonna walk into and just lollygag. It takes work. It takes time, energy, dedication to get an education, to go to school. So when I hear some of these politicians and other individuals in the media talk about getting an education or getting a degree, it's overrated. It might be, but there's more to that story. There should be more to that conversation. We should have more opportunities for our young Black boys and girls to get a trade, to talk about these different crafts that they can learn so that they can support their families. Do you know why the EEOC was stood up? So the EEOC is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So you know what that means is that every single person should have the ability or afford the opportunity to work. You know, for the longest, Black folks wasn't afforded the opportunity to work. Talk to your mamas, especially if they were born in the 30s and the 20s and even the 40s. Talk about the type of jobs that they had to have or that they could get. They worked as housekeepers, they worked as gardeners, they worked as porters, often getting barely the minimum wage. Barely. And you're right, Russell, consistency is a must. But like I mentioned, everyone is not able to go to college, but there has to be more to that conversation. And you're right, even if you have a let me tell you what, because I work at some of these places, don't discriminate against somebody who has a disability. You might as well just listen, ching ching, I wish I could put some dollar signs. If you discriminate against someone who has a disability, that is a fine. You are very, very likely to get sanctioned by the EEOC. As I mentioned, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And that is not just for federal employees. EEOC is for private individuals as well. Someone was telling me the other day that they had a disability for one, but another one that we see cropping up is religious accommodations. We have reasonable accommodations for individuals that has a handicap, but then there's also those that have religious accommodations. I.e., example, Muslims. Muslims have to pray at a certain time. So you know what? Once an individual puts in a religious accommodation, the agency or your organization, I'm going to put air quotes, have to. And a have to is more so in the federal government, that they have to at least entertain that request. Now, they don't always have to grant you that request, and they do not have to grant you the requests that you are asking for. A lot of times, individuals come in, want, i.e., example, individual with a disability. And let's say that they have a um, they need braille. Let's say they need a monitor that will allow them to see things magnified. And let's say they put in a request for this high tech, 1,000 or 2,000 and some dollar monitor. Now, the agency does have to evaluate what the individual is asking for, but they may have something that is comparable that only costs $500. So you may not get what you're asking for, but you may be able, the agency may be able to do a modification that whatever it is that your doctor, because this has to go through medical, that they have to provide you what or similar situated. Now, how did I learn all of this? Well, let's get back. So we just kind of, you know how you take that road and going off onto a different path, but it's still relative. It's still relative because of my education, because of my training. So let's go back to where I put a pin in on what my education looks like. So one, I have a associate's degree in personnel, which I actually got from the military. So the military has a what is called the Community College of the Air Force, and I was able to get a certificate. And actually, it is that one right there, one of the first ones I ever received. That can you imagine not feeling like you can learn? Not feeling that you are smart enough to be in the room, not feeling smart enough to open up your mouth and actually to get a degree. And when I realized that, I didn't have to stop there. So that was my associates. Then, because I was active duty, I decided to go ahead and get a bachelor's. And I got that from the University of Maryland University College, and that is in healthcare administration. And the fortunate thing about being in the military, they had professors to come on base, and that's allowed me to be able to go to school right there on base. But I didn't stop there. By that time, I was like, brush your shoulders off, girl. You got this. You are smart. You can learn. Now, do you have to take some extra time to do it? Absolutely. But that shouldn't be a hindrance. That wasn't a hindrance. So, what I decided after that was to go get my master's. And I got my first master's from Webster University. And they actually had classes on Andrews Air Force Base. So, I took classes on Andrews from Webster. Now, Webster is a large size university out of St. Louis, Missouri. But because a lot of these college and university has partnerships with with these military bases, so they're satellite offices. And actually, I took those classes. See, Webster, because that degree is in human resource man. I actually took those at Bowling Air Force Base. So don't let don't put obstacles and barriers in front of you from you not moving forward to getting your education. Now, mind you, at that particular time, I was active duty. I had 3 kids and a husband by the time I got my first master's. I when I retired is the same year that I walked with my master's from Webster University. So check this out. Then came now let me tell you this. I do not have any student loans. I've never had any student loans. Now, that's pretty much unheard of. The military paid for all of my education, every last cent of it. So, when I retired in 2007 and received my first master's, is also when the post 9/11 GI Bill was put into effect. The thing about the post, which is wonderful, 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 the post 9/11 GI Bill paid you, well, first it paid for tuition and fees. Then they gave you a monthly stipend based on your housing allowance, and they gave you book money. You ask, why would someone not take advantage of that? I know, right? So, what I decided to do was enroll at George Mason University. So, by this time, I am a federal employee, probably 2009, 2000, no, 2019, 2018, 20, one of those years, it doesn't matter, it's a relative. I enrolled at George Mason University. I was so surprised I even got accepted. And George Mason University is in Arlington, Virginia. So I would travel um, once or twice a week to George Mason University. Get, I would get off work and take the subway to George Mason. I would park my car at the subway versus going all the way into the office. Because let me tell you what, getting an education is a sacrifice. It's not something that comes easy. A lot of times we have to decide what is important, not necessarily what is more important, but putting this on the level of being important. So I finished there at George Mason right at the end of the pandemic with my second master's in conflict resolution and analysis, to why I consider myself an expert in conflict. I'm a conflict resolution practitioner. I'm the conflict resolution buster. Conflict resolution buster. One thing for sure and another thing for certain. Conflict is inevitable. It happens every single day. So before I go any farther, let me talk about what conflict looks like. If you think that my road to getting an education was simple, no, it was not. Not one little bit. Think about being married. Think about having a child born at 1 pound and 5 ounces, being Tyson Vegas Thompson. Think about having a husband who has his own practice. So, no, it was not a cakewalk. But let me tell you what, I was determined. I was determined that I was going to get these degrees no matter what. It is a sacrifice. I made the sacrifice that I was not a dummy and that, and you know, when you finally break out that mold, when you break out and say, I'm not a dummy, I can do this. Do you know how much of a weight has been lifted off of your shoulders? Do you know how much you gain as far as your self esteem, as far as your confidence? Let me tell you what, when I walk in the room, I belong in that room. When I sit at the table, I belong at that table because I bring confidence, assurance, and a level of expertise that no one can take away from you. And that's what my grandmother said. Granny only had an eighth grade education, but she was the smartest woman that I knew. Because Granny said, baby, get that sheepskin because they can never take it away from you. And let me tell you what, they may not like you, but they can never take it away from you. And she was right about that. She was right because conflict comes in all different shapes, forms, and fashion. Every day we get up, there's a conflict situation happening. Either somebody done said something to you, either you've gotten some bad news about something, one of your kids, one of your relatives, something has happened. Not being able to get on the computer, not being able to log in. There's different levels of conflict, there's different degrees of conflict. But conflict happens every single day, and it's up to you, on how you are going to deal with the conflict that you are presented with every single day. Going through that program, I can probably also say that I wasn't the youngest one there. I may have been the oldest one there. But also, along with that, also came with world experience because I was already working in the field. I'm already working as a conflict resolution buster. One thing for sure, and another thing for certain, conflict is inevitable. And I learned a lot from George Mason. Those professors there are phenomenal. Actually, that is so. Public service announcement. My goal is to work as a professor at a college or university. So if anyone here is listening and need a conflict resolution practitioner, conflict buster, hit me up. I'll be interested in entertaining being an adjunct professor at a college or university. So now let me just move on. So I have an associate's, I have a bachelor's, I have 2 masters. I never thought that I was going to ever get a doctorate. But I did. Let me see. So when I was still at George Mason, a advertisement came across my thread on Facebook. The Virginia University of Lynchburg. They had a brand new doctorate program in healthcare administration. Truly, honestly, I thought it was a hoax. I thought it was a scam. I thought it was a scam for somebody to get my email, something. And then I also is this a private college or is this a public college? Because remember I told you earlier, I still have Montgomery GI Bill money. Yes. Yes. And knowing that I still had some months on there, meaning that they would pay for it. Can I speak it? Yes. Speak life into your journey. Speak life into what you want. Another public service announcement. This month, my family, my sister Cindy, Russell said it. He's not fasting, but I believe he is. He fasts in his own way. And Tanja Thompson, Dr. Tanja Thompson, that's me. We are fasting this month. And that is to becoming more centered, to consecrate ourselves more so with the Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Reading the Bible. And soon after this session is over, we will get on our Zoom call where we have the children come on and pray. And we pray. My brother Russell said, y'all need to stop listening to his prayers. How can we not? Because Erica actually taped it. And she said, Uncle Russell, I taped your prayer and you go for 9 minutes. Yes, my brother Russell prays for 9 minutes, but we're not listening to his prayer per se, not to use it against him. But okay, let me get back to. And so when I went to put in my registration for George Mason, for Virginia University of Lynchburg, I thought it was a scam. I did not think that it was an actual program, but it was. 15-month SOW program. And let me tell you, it was hard. It was extremely hard. Again, things worth having do not come easy. If you want something and you truly treasure it, it is going to come with some heartache and some heart and some pain and commitment and dedication and staying on task. Because that's what I had to do to finish that program. To why I am now Dr. Tanja Thompson. And if I'm leaning. You see me there in my robe and right above it, or maybe to the left of it, that is my doctorate in healthcare administration. Not in a million years would I would have thought that I would have received a doctorate. Thank you so very much for joining. My name is Dr. Tanja Thompson, and I'm the conflict resolution buster. One thing for sure and another thing for certain, conflict is inevitable. Stay tuned. Make sure you like, share, and click the bell for additional notifications of when I come on live to share some more of my tips, to show my insights of just how we can make ourselves better. Because you know what? A lot of times we don't hear the good things. All in the news is all of this negativity. But you know what? It is MLK Day. And I feel good. I feel good because I was able to get out there in March. I had access to be able to listen to some beautiful speeches, to hear individuals talk about their journey. So again, thank you for joining me, Dr. Tanja Thompson, Conflict Resolution Buster. And until next time, stay safe, stay safe. Again, sometimes it comes here, sometimes it comes in here, and it doesn't always come. Again, stay safe.